My mom chose my sister over me, so I cut them both out of my life. Hey Reddit, I'm not sure how to start this or if I'm even looking for advice anymore. Maybe I just need to get this out of my system, or maybe there's someone out there who will recognize their own story in mine. I, 28F, grew up in a family of four: my mom, dad, my older sister, let's call her Emma, 31F, and me. From as far back as I can remember, things were unequal. Not in the obvious, Cinderella living in the attic way, but little things that added up over years until I couldn't ignore it anymore. Emma was always the golden child. She was outgoing, popular, got good grades, and seemed to fit my mom's idea of what a daughter should be. I was quieter, bookish, and pretty awkward as a kid. If I got a B+, Mom would ask, why not an A? But when Emma brought home a C, it was, she tried her best. Back then, I thought that was just how families worked. Now I know better. Looking back, the favoritism was always there, but as a kid you just accept it. Birthdays, for example, Emma always got big parties with all her friends, elaborate cakes, new dresses. My birthdays were quieter, sometimes just immediate family, and I usually got hand-me-down gifts or whatever was on sale. I told myself it didn't matter, but it stung every time. Then there were the after-school activities. Emma did dance and soccer, and Mom was at every game and recital, front row with flowers and cheering the loudest. I was into art club and school plays, but Mom always had to work late or couldn't get away. Once, I remember standing backstage, scanning the seats for her, and realizing she wasn't there again. Dad would apologize and make excuses for her, but it never changed. At the time, I kept hoping it was just bad luck or timing. I didn't want to believe my mom was actually choosing Emma over me. As we got older, the gap just grew. Emma could do no wrong. When she snuck out to parties or came home with questionable friends, Mom laughed it off as just teenage stuff. If I so much as broke curfew by 10 minutes, I was grounded for a week and got the full lecture about responsibility. It became a running joke in our house that Emma's just adventurous, you're the serious one, but it never felt like a joke to me. School events were the same. Emma's science fair project was displayed in the living room for weeks, while mine barely got a good job. When I won a regional art contest in high school, Mom's response was, "That's nice, honey, but don't you think you should focus on something more practical?" I started doubting myself, thinking maybe I wasn't good enough or interesting enough to deserve the same attention. The favoritism wasn't always loud or cruel. Sometimes it was the silence that hurt the most. It's funny how you can get used to being overlooked. By the time I hit my late teens, I'd stopped expecting fairness. At family dinners, Emma's stories and opinions always took center stage. If I tried to share something about my day, Mom would listen for a few seconds before turning the conversation back to Emma or interrupting with chores she needed me to do. Even the little things added up. Emma was allowed to borrow Mom's jewelry or clothes whenever she wanted. If I asked, I got a lecture about taking care of nice things. When Emma needed money, it was quietly slipped into her purse. When I needed help, like for a school trip, I was told to be independent and save up. I started to pull away, spending more time alone in my room or with friends' families who seemed warmer, more interested. I told myself I didn't care, but deep down, I kept waiting for things to change, for Mom to finally see me. By college, Emma started to lean into the role Mom had built for her. She'd joke about how she was Mom's favorite, sometimes in front of relatives or friends. At first, I'd laugh along, pretending it was all in good fun, but it burned. If I tried to stand up for myself or point out the unfairness, Mom would tell me I was being too sensitive or accuse me of creating drama. Emma wasn't outright cruel, but she never stood up for me either. When Mom made a big deal about Emma's achievements or gave her special treatment, Emma just accepted it as her due. She'd forget to invite me places or would post family photos online where I was conveniently cropped out or never included. I felt like I was fading in my own family. Every time I tried to speak up, I was shut down. It started affecting my confidence in other areas. I second-guessed my worth in friendships, and even at work. The worst part was wondering if I was imagining it all. There were a lot of small moments that hurt, but one sticks out as the point where I couldn't deny it anymore. It was Emma's engagement party. My mom went all out, rented a venue, invited distant relatives, spent months planning every detail. I was happy for my sister, genuinely, so I offered to help. Mom brushed me off, saying I'd just get in the way. During the party, I watched as Mom introduced Emma to everyone like royalty. I was practically invisible, relegated to setting up tables and running errands. At one point, an aunt asked me why I seemed so quiet and withdrawn. Before I could answer, Mom jumped in, saying, "Oh, you know her. She's just shy." Emma's always been the outgoing one. That was the night I realized my place in the family was basically set. I was support staff in my own life, while Emma was the main character. The resentment I'd buried for years started bubbling up, and I knew something had to change. The real breaking point came a few months later, when I landed my first serious job out of college. I was proud. I'd worked hard, and it felt like my first real step into adulthood. I called my mom, hoping she'd be excited. She barely listened before changing the subject to Emma's wedding dress fittings and bridal showers. I tried again at dinner that weekend, sharing the news with both of them. Emma barely looked up from her phone, and Mom gave a polite, "That's nice, honey," before launching into another story about wedding planning. No one asked me about the job, the company, or how I felt. Driving home that night, I felt hollow. It hit me that I could win an Olympic medal, and my mom would still be more interested in Emma's latest Instagram post. That was the first time I truly wondered, why am I fighting so hard to earn their love when it's never going to be enough? The final straw came soon after Emma's wedding. I wasn't in the bridal party. Mom said it was just for Emma's closest friends, but even distant cousins made the cut. At the reception, Mom barely spoke to me, too busy fussing over Emma and taking pictures with her favorite girl. A week later, Mom called, not to check on me, but to ask if I could help Emma move into her new apartment. I was exhausted from work and had plans that weekend. When I politely declined, Mom snapped. She accused me of being selfish, said Emma deserved the world after her big day, and that I should step up as a sister. That phone call left me shaking. It wasn't just disappointment anymore, it was rage and heartbreak tangled together. I realized I was done being the backup plan, the emotional punching bag, the invisible child. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider what life might look like without them. That night, I barely slept. I replayed years of conversations, birthdays, holidays, every moment I'd been sidelined or dismissed. I kept asking myself, if this was any other relationship, would I tolerate it? If a friend treated me this way, I would have cut them off years ago. So why did I keep coming back for more from my own family? The next morning, I sent a message to both Mom and Emma. I told them I needed space, that I felt hurt and excluded for years, and I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I said I wouldn't be coming around for a while and asked them not to contact me unless they genuinely wanted to talk things through, really listen, not just brush it off. Sending the text was terrifying. I cried after hitting send. It felt like jumping off a cliff, but it was also the first real act of self-respect I'd managed in a long time. The silence was deafening at first. Days went by with no reply from either of them. When Mom finally did respond, her message was short and defensive. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but you're overreacting. We've always done our best for you." Emma texted a couple days later, basically saying I was being dramatic and should just get over it. No one called. No one asked to meet or really talk. Instead, they started posting photos online of family gatherings, ones I wasn't invited to. Some relatives reached out privately, saying they hoped things would blow over, but a few actually admitted they'd noticed the way I was treated and understood why I left. It was surreal to watch my own family move on without me, as if my absence was just a minor inconvenience. Part of me was devastated. Another part felt oddly free, even if that freedom came with a side of guilt and loneliness. In the weeks after I cut them off, my emotions swung wildly. Some days, I felt relief, like I could finally breathe after years of holding it in. Other days, the guilt hit hard. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to share good news or ask advice, only to remember that Lifeline was gone. Holidays were the toughest. Seeing photos of Emma and Mom smiling at Thanksgiving, or getting Merry Christmas texts from extended family who didn't know the full story, made me question everything. I wondered if I'd made a huge mistake or if I was really as ungrateful as Mom claimed. But I also started noticing small, positive changes. I had more mental energy. I threw myself into work and hobbies. I spent time with friends who actually made me feel seen and valued. For the first time, I realized how heavy the constant need for approval had been and how much lighter I felt without it. With my family out of the picture, I had to relearn what support and love looked like. At first, I felt lost and a bit ashamed, like I'd failed some unspoken rule. But gradually, I started letting people in, friends who checked in on me just because, coworkers who celebrated my little wins, even a couple of relatives who quietly reached out to say they understood. Therapy helped, too. For the first time, I could talk openly about the favoritism and its impact. My therapist helped me see that setting boundaries wasn't cruel or selfish, it was healthy. I stopped blaming myself for my family's choices. I started making decisions for me, not just to win approval I'd never get. I learned to celebrate my own milestones, even if nobody else sent a card or showed up. Every little bit of self-care and self-acceptance felt like a small victory. Slowly, I started to feel whole again. About 6 months after I cut contact, Mom reached out. She sent a long, emotional message saying she missed me and wanted to move past all this drama. She never actually apologized or acknowledged any of the favoritism. Instead, it was all about how hard things had been for her with me gone, and how family should stick together no matter what. Emma also sent a few messages, mostly trying to guilt me back, saying Mom was so sad, that I was being stubborn, and that I should just come home for Mom's sake. Neither of them asked how I was doing, or tried to understand why I left in the first place. It was hard not to give in, especially when I still craved their approval. But reading their messages made me realize how much had changed. For the first time, I could see the manipulation for what it was, and I didn't feel tempted to go back. After some thought, I replied with honesty and boundaries. I told Mom I appreciated that she missed me, but I needed her to acknowledge how I'd been treated and genuinely want to change, not just brush everything aside and pretend it never happened. I said I wouldn't come back into their lives unless I felt respected and valued, not just tolerated as a background character. Emma didn't take it well. She sent a few angry texts, accusing me of tearing the family apart, saying I was ungrateful and dramatic. Mom mostly went quiet after my response, except for a few guilt-laden messages on holidays. It hurt, but I stuck to my decision. I kept my distance, even when it was tempting to go back to what was familiar. Instead, I focused on the people who made space for me in their lives, the ones who listened, believed me, and never made me feel like I was too much. The more I invested in those relationships, the less power my mom and sister had over my happiness. Now, looking back, I realized cutting ties was the hardest and best thing I ever did for myself. I grieved the family I wish I'd had, but I've also built something better. A chosen family of friends and supporters who actually value me for who I am. I've learned that love isn't about obligation or guilt. It's about respect and acceptance. If anyone reading this is stuck in a similar situation, here's my advice. You're not selfish for wanting to be treated fairly. You're not ungrateful for setting boundaries. Sometimes, loving yourself means letting go of people who refuse to see your worth, even if those people are your own family. It still hurts sometimes, but I don't regret my decision. I'm finally living my own story, not just playing a supporting role in someone else's. And honestly, that freedom is worth everything.